Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I've got a fun kind of battle head-to-head thing to do. I don't know what to call that without copying some other channel, but that's a hard thing because that's kind of what it is. Anyway, we're gonna see which of these two knives I prefer. And this is an exciting moment because it's really rare for me, somebody who loves the PM2 as much as I do, to find another knife that I think is worth stacking up against it. They're pretty similar in values. They're both relatively similar in construction. There's a lot of things about these. They're similar size. They carry similarly. There's a lot about these that's pretty similar. So I have recently fallen in love with the SuperFreek. So much so that the second that the Mini Freek -1 was launched, I bought one because I like that knife so much. If you haven't seen my review on it, you'll find out I borrowed one from my buddy Kyle. As soon as I unboxed it, I messaged him, asked him if I could buy it from him. He said no, so I ordered this one from Rivers Edge Cutlery. This PM2 obviously comes from Rivers Edge Cutlery because it's the Rivers Edge Cutlery exclusive. This is the Scorpion PM2 in CPM 10V blade steel. Now, the SuperFreek is not S30V like the regular Freek is. The SuperFreek is an M4. Sorry, I should show you the side that actually says M4. M4 blade steel, which happens to be one of my favorite steels. So I'm going to do this based on the versions that I have. Now, oftentimes when I would do a comparison like this, it's not that uncommon for me to say, let's pretend these are both the base versions of this to keep it as fair as possible. But in this case, I think this is actually a pretty fair comparison in the two versions that I have, because this is the ultimate, in my opinion, version of the Freek. And this is, in my opinion, the ultimate version of the PM2. Currently available for either knife, these are my preferred versions. Of all that exist, which for the Freek there's only a couple, but for the PM2 there's a whole bunch, these are the ones that I want the most. They're the ones that I have in my collection and they're not going anywhere. So I think it's fair for me to say, going into this, we're going to judge them based on the 10V Scorpion Rivers Edge Cutlery PM2 and the M4 SuperFreek. If you are watching this video considering either getting a SuperFreek or an S30V PM2, get the SuperFreek, an M4. I think that's a better knife with this blade steel than an S30V PM2. But if you're looking at the regular Freek with the handles that I don't like at all and an S30V blade steel, or you're looking at a PM2 like this one, whether it's 10V or K390 or Maximet or M4 maybe even, something cool and a better steel, then get the PM2. But let's pretend for this exercise that we don't have to pretend that these are the knives we're looking at, because they are. So keep all of that in mind. If you're looking at a base version of the Freek versus a really Gucci PM2 with a great steel, get the PM2. That's my opinion. If you're looking vice versa, make the decision as outlined. Anyways, I'm going to judge these on a few different criteria. I've done this a few times before. It's going to be the same as in the past. 7 categories. There will be a winner. Ties are possible, but I try really hard to not do ties unless they really are that close. I think there's going to be one tie in this one, but we'll see at the end. So the categories are going to be looks, action, ergos, fit and finish, value, carry, and cutting. That's what we're going to grade on. So let's start with looks. This one is interesting because I personally happen to love the way the PM2 looks. I think it's a good looking knife. But is it known for its attractiveness? Not really. Is part of why it's so attractive to me because it works so well for me? For sure. Like, there's no getting around that. This knife is not, if I put it up against the other knives in my collection, this isn't going to win any beauty pageants. It's just not like what it's going for. The SuperFreek, on the other hand, it seems like they really, really tried on the aesthetics, and I think they nailed it. We've got G10 in what on the surface looks like 2 colors, but really it's 3, because we've got black and gray layered G10 that they've milled to show the different layers, which looks cool and gives it a really great level of grip. But then internally, it's red G10 and matched with the red barrel spacers, and then all the black hardware everywhere, blacked out blade. It works really, really well for me. So looks is going to go to the SuperFreek. I think this is the more visually striking knife of these two here. If you're looking, again, at the regular S30V Freek, that knife in the looks department doesn't really do it for me. But we're talking about these here. And I think the SuperFreek looks better than the PM2, objectively speaking. Again, or I should say, looks is a hard thing for me to judge for everybody. So you can judge these for yourself on the ones that you may disagree with me on, but I think this looks better. Next, action. Now, the SuperFreek has a pretty good action. At least now it does. When it came out of the box, if you watch my unboxing video on this one, it was horrendous. They had just over-tightened the pivot way too much, and it was bad, like really bad. Now, it's pretty good. I like axis locks. I enjoy them. It's a great functional way to use a knife, and it's cool. But holes are greater than studs. So, some of my favorite knives to fidget with ever, and that deploy reliably, are compression locks with holes. It's my preferred way to deploy a knife, to middle finger flick it with a hole. I can middle finger flick the studs on the SuperFreek, sure, but this is just, to me, it's a more satisfying deployment. I like the compression lock more than the axis lock, both in terms of the way it functions and in the perceived longevity. I've never had an axis lock fail on me, but so many people say, oh, the Omega spring fails eventually, blah, 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 blah. Again, I haven't had it happen, but I think the failure rate of the compression lock it's lower. So action is going to go to the PM2 because I prefer that action for sure. Ergos. This one's really, really tough for me. The ergos are different on each of these knives, and I think they can be a little bit polarizing. So the PM2, they have barely, and I mean barely, knocked down the corner on this G10. It's as if they left it perfectly square. It's like, it's kind of blocky in hand. That said, it's not sharp in hand, and the way that my hand fits a PM2 is excellent. Like, when I'm feeling this edge, I would prefer for it to be like scalloped, like the Shaman is, how it's like really rounded. I think, in theory, I would like that better. I've never felt a PM2 like that. Maybe I would change my mind once I had it in hand, but I think it would do well to have that. That being said, the way that this knife contours into my hand, the belly of the handle there with the swell here, the swell there, the nice gradual curve of the back, the way that the thumb ramp sits with this jimping that I actually really like, it's just excellent. Plus I can choke up, I can get into this grip up here in the forward choil, also super comfortable. I can choke back if I need to do like a chopping task or something because I've got this nice swell back here. Great ergos any way I put it. In reverse grip, it's fantastic. Reverse grip draw cut is even comfortable. Forward grip draw cut, comfortable. Any way that I put this knife in hand, it's comfortable for me. And it just works really well. Now, the SuperFreek is also very comfortable for me. This G10 is not sandpapery, gritty, like peel ply texture like the PM2 is. This is smooth. It's just been milled to have some texture. So it's got like these milled waves in it and these contours where they've taken material off and put some shape into it. We've got a nice finger groove that fits me well up here, but then we've got a kind of a flat swell here mated with the swell on the back that's curved, and it works really, really well for me. It feels excellent. I have zero complaints about this and its ergos. It really is great, but the PM2 just barely edges it out in terms of the way it actually works for my hand. This knife feels smoother and it feels a little more rounded. All this one, it's not super rounded on the corners either. It's a little bit abrupt and kind of angular too. But it's a little bit smoother than the PM2, but it's also a little bit, I don't know if it's just my imagination. No, it actually is. It's a little bit thicker than the PM2 because these scales kind of have some contour to them and they're like raised in the centermost portion. It just feels a little bit fatter in hand, and I don't mind it. Again, these ergos are excellent, but the way that the PM2 really goes in my hand at the end of the day, and the way every time I grab it, I feel super locked into it, but not in a way that's sharp or too aggressive or too tactical or anything like that. It's just, for me, PM2 ergos are money. And I get that some people PM2 ergos don't work for. I know plenty of people who greatly prefer Manix 2 ergos to PM2 ergos. The Manix 2 ergos don't work for me at all. So ergos are a personal thing. For me, I'm going to say that ergos on the PM2 just barely win. They're great on the SuperFreek as well, but just barely better on the PM2. Next is going to be fit and finish. So both of these knives are USA made. One comes from Colorado. One comes from, I think, Benchmade's in Oregon, right? Portland area. So Golden, Colorado, USA earth, compression lock, great tolerances. I don't have any blade play the way that my PM2 is dialed in right now, and my action is excellent. Similarly here on the SuperFreek, 0 blade play. I could probably get this a little more drop shutty if I gave it a little blade play. Benchmades get super flippy if you give them a little blade play. So do Spydercos, frankly. But neither of them have blade play the way they're set up. Both of them are centered, although if we really get down to it, the PM2 is perfectly centered, and the Benchmade is like 55-45, 60-40. It's just a hair off. And maybe I could adjust that out of it, but I haven't had to adjust the PM2 at all. Literally 0. I haven't adjusted it one bit. It was a little stiffer when it came out of the box than it is now, but it was acceptably stiff. It felt like new knife stiff. This knife, when it came out of box, was unacceptably stiff. I have been loving on Benchmade lately. They're doing a lot of good things, and they're rising in my favor, and they're rising in my collection. I have more of them now than I have in a long time. But the way that they send some of their knives, I just don't really understand why they would over tighten it to the point where this knife like almost didn't want to open. Like I would push and it would only half deploy, and I'd be like flicking it like it should really be going out, flicking it hard. I couldn't Spidey flick it open, and then closing it, I'd pull the axis lock and it would just sit, and I'd shake it and it wouldn't go. Now it'll go because I loosened it and put KPL in it, but they shouldn't be sending knives that have actions that bad. There's not a functional advantage to tightening a pivot that much. The way I have it right now, there is 0 blade play. There's no more blade play than it was when it was super over tightened, but the action works. So anyway, fit and finish is gonna go to the PM2 because it came flawless. It's excellent. Both of these knives have great materials. They're both rocking G10. The PM2 has full internal liners. The entire span of the knife is filled with a stainless steel liner, which has been hollowed out for some weight reduction. The SuperFreek, on the other hand, has like half liners, not even quite half, comes about to that screw. Internally, there's these little baby liners that the washers run on and that cage the axis lock, if you will. But they're both great G10. They're both riding on washers. They're both excellent materials. They're both dialed in well. They both don't have blade play, forward, backward, front, side to side. They're excellent in that regard. So the real reason why the PM2 is going to win that contest is because it came out of the box just right and the Benchmade didn't. And Spyderco, I haven't had any issues with like that ever. Benchmade, I've had several. Even my brand new Mini Freek just came out of the box and I had to adjust it. It wasn't as bad as this one was, but it wasn't right either. So there's that. Next, value. I guess we should talk prices real quick because these do have a little bit of a cost difference, although I didn't look them up before doing this and I don't remember to the dollar what they cost. I just bought this one what, like 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 190, maybe it was 192, something like that. My total was just over 200 bucks with a bottle of KPL shipped from Rivers Edge. This I bought brand new when they dropped from Rivers Edge, so that's the price I'm going off of because that's what I paid for it. If you're talking secondary prices, that's a different game you got to play. But this knife, I think, was right around 170. Might have even been in the 160s. So a little less than the Benchmade, yeah, but they're both sub 200. They're both above 150. At that point, to me, you're kind of splitting hairs at that point. Like if I'm spending 160 on a knife or 190, that $30, if I like the knife enough more, $30 isn't a big, it's a non-factor. So I don't really think that these are different enough in price that I should expect more material wise from either one. I will say I do find in general both companies can have somewhat steep pricing. The loophole for me is Sprints and Exclusives from Spyderco, pair of 3s, PM2s. You get so much material for your dollar out of these compared to buying like a base S30 V1 or even a Maximet one, or like the production ones are, Maximet's a bad example. I think that's still a really good value. But if you're comparing to the base S30V versions, you get a lot for this amount of money. Like you can get an M4 PM2 if you got one when it was an exclusive that dropped. They're not readily available like a SuperFreek is. You could get one for 160 bucks or whatever they were when, who's done them? Blade HQ has done M4 ones. Somebody else did one because there was a carbon fiber one too. Anyways, they both, to me, cost about the same and you're getting about the same amount of materials. So what value is really going to come down to, I guess, would be that even though M4 is what I would consider a tier 1 steel, like an excellent, excellent steel, for me to be able to get 10V, and all the other ingredients are the same, by the way. We've got stainless steel internals, we've got G10 scales, fit and finish is fantastic. 10V is worth more to me than M4 is, for sure. And this knife was less expensive than that knife was. So value has to go to the PM2. That's the way it is. I will say, for me, any PM2 that I buy, I do have to buy a clip for. With Benchmade, I prefer their mini deep carry clip as well. That's the way I'm going to carry this one, is with that clip on there. And I did have to order that from Benchmade, but to get a replacement mini deep carry clip from Benchmade is only $5. Whereas I have to go aftermarket for the Spyderco. So if that makes a difference to you, so be it. I don't mind spending 20 bucks to get a clip that I really like, 25 or whatever it is. So there's that. Value is going to go to the PM2. The next one is carry. Let's flip them back over. I shouldn't have turned them over yet. These knives are similar in size, as you can see. We're really not far off from each other. The SuperFreek is a little bit thicker in pocket, but the PM2 is a little bit taller from here to here in pocket. So both of them, I had to swap the clip. This one shipped with their split arrow wiener clip, whatever you want to call it. I don't like that clip from Benchmade. I put mini deep carry clips on any Benchmade that I own, with exception of my super old Benchmade, which I guess one would probably fit on, but this is tip down, and this is a knife that I have for nostalgia, not for its functionality. So anyway, yeah, both of these got different clips with these deep carry clips on them. Honestly, this being a little thicker, that being a little taller there, I really don't have a preference between these two knives. The way that they carry, both of them are awesome. This probably slips in and out of pocket slightly easier, being a little bit smoother, but the PM2 I have no issues going in and out of pocket. I don't have problems shredding my pockets on PM2s. It's just not really a problem for me. With the PM2, PM2s I've owned in the past, I've had Lynch clips. This one has an MXG clip. There are several options of clips like that. It works really, really well. Both of these are full-size EDC knives for me. Anything bigger than this, I would start to call like an oversized or extra large EDC knife. This is like a full size EDC primary front right pocket knife for me, and both of them carry exceptionally well in that role, and they're great. So that's going to be the one tie here, is I really can't pick between these two, which would be a winner in that category. They both carry excellent for their size and weight. They both weigh about the same. It's hard for me to discern if one of these is heavier than the other to the touch. They're great. So the last category is going to be cutting. So let's open these up, take a look at the blades. Both of these are coated. The Spyderco is DLC. I want to say Benchmade uses Cerakote. It's kind of hard to tell if there's any difference there. I haven't had any issues with coatings from either company. I've owned coated blades from both in the past. I've put a lot of use on the 10V Paramilitary 2, and so far the coating is holding up great. It's had some like stuff get on the surface of it. It's all wiped off. Even here you can see where I went into some material there, and I'm certain that that will wipe off because it's already starting to. So the coating isn't really going to be a factor here. I haven't had issues with the coating on either of these. Both shipped with phenomenal factory edges. They are both still screaming sharp. I have not sharpened either. I've used the 10V much more because I've had it for longer and because it's one of my user knives that I use frequently, but both are great blade steels. I do give an edge to 10V. Obviously, that's one of my top 3 favorite blade steels currently available on a pocket knife. But M4 is probably in my top 5. It's like also really, really good. So they're both tier 1 blade steels. Let's talk the way they're ground, see if that can narrow it down a little bit. The PM2, we get a full flat grind. It depends on where you draw the line. I see some people these days who consider thin behind the edge to be like 10,000ths behind the edge. To me, a good EDC thickness behind the edge for the type of tasks that I do with what I would, again, consider like a full-size primary EDC knife, about 20,000ths. Between 20 and 25 is fine. As low as like 15 is cool. If it's thinner than that, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but the thinness behind the edge on the PM2 is great for me. It's consistent behind the edge on this one. The grinds are even. The edge bevel is great. I don't even see much like belt chatter like a lot of people have seen on this knife. There's a little bit, but it's a great edge, and it's ground. I love full flat grinds for actual cutting, for going through things like cardboard for an extended period of time. Full flat grinds just work great for me. I really, really like it. Love that I've got a forward finger choil. The blade shape is excellent. I love, some people give the PM2 a hard time because it gets so thin out to the tip, and I've seen plenty of pictures of people with broken tips on PM2s, but I've stuck this one into logs. I do not shy away from any task with this knife. I haven't had any structural issues with the tip on a PM2 yet. So I also like how stabby it really is for a lot of the precise EDC tasks that I do. A lot of my daughter's like Barbies come with stupid amounts of not only zip ties, but those little plastic, I don't even know what they're called. It's kind of like a clothes tag, the little connector things, but they put them in like the back of the head of a Barbie to hold it to the packaging, and like in a bunch of places. And you got to get in there and not cut the Barbie's hair. This is probably a problem that a lot of people aren't going to relate to right now, but you got to get real precise. And this knife with that type of tip for real precise stuff like that, which I do with EDC knives pretty frequently, I dig the PM2 tip. So I like the way the PM2 is ground. I like the blade shape. I like everything about this blade as an EDC knife. It is one of, if not my favorite EDC knives for the money. Now, the SuperFreek surprised me when I got it. I thought it was going to be much thicker behind the edge than it is. I haven't put tools to measure how thin these are side by side or anything like that. I'm going off of what I can feel and what I've heard, but the thinness behind the edge on here feels and performs the same to me as the PM2. It's not a full flat grind. We've got another flat up here, but it's a nice tall flat grind, and it's done really well. We've certainly got more material carried out to the tip. If you look at the difference on those, I'm hoping you can see that. I don't know if you can, but it's certainly thicker out to the tip. If we look at cutting edge, trying to line these up, you get a little bit more cutting edge out of the SuperFreek. Not a ton. They're both similar amounts of cutting edge, almost identical blade lengths. So it's a really, really hard one. I think what it has to really come down to is kind of gonna be the way that these blades work for me paired with the ergonomics, because the way that they're ground, the shapes of them, the overall profiles, the edges that came on them are really, it's really hard for me to pick a winner. But the knife that I would pick if I'm going to be doing an extended amount of cutting, which I'm grading right now on cutting, if I had to reach for one, it's gonna be the PM2. And I think a lot of that is just the ergos. The way that it locks into my hand, the way that this thumb ramp is shaped compared to this thumb ramp. Again, this is so good. It's really, really good. It deserves to be held up against this one right now for this competition or comparison, whatever you want to call it. But I've got to give it just by a hair to the PM2, and it's close. Hate to do it to you, SuperFreek, but PM2 wins there as well. So with that tie, let's think. Looks went to SuperFreek, action went to PM2, ergos went to PM2, fit and finish went to SuperFreek. So we're 2 and 2. Value went to PM2, carry went to both, and cutting went to PM2. So we've got a 5-3 win, PM2 to SuperFreek. And frankly, if you had told me a couple weeks ago that I'd be getting a Benchmade that was that close to my 10V Scorpion PM2 in a comparison that I judged myself, I would have had a hard time believing you that Benchmade made a knife that would be worthy of comparing like this and would score some points against it. So take all of that for what it's worth. I guess that's going to be that. That's my comparison between the two knives. They're both excellent buys. The SuperFreek is a production version of the knife, so you can go out and you can just get one. Right now, retailers have them. They're consistent in pricing. You can probably find one on the secondary for even less than they come new because they're readily available. They're in production. The Scorpion PM2. Lately, I've been seeing them go a little north of $200, $220, right in that ballpark for nice condition ones. This one's mine forever. I got it obviously at the drop price. So if you're comparing these knives now, you've got to factor in things that I didn't, because I got this one new and this one new, and that changed the pricing compared to what they can be found at now. But hopefully this is enlightening for you. You can sub in a lot of these things I said for other PM2s. You probably can't sub much in for the regular Freek compared to the SuperFreek. I don't have any real affinity towards the regular Freek. I don't like the handle material. I don't love it aesthetically. Is it a good functional knife? Sure, absolutely. If this one is good, then that one has to have some good things going for it too. But it's not a knife I would consider. If you're getting a Freek, I strongly recommend to go for the SuperFreek, because M4 is a huge jump. The specialness of how this handle feels, how it looks, the way the knife comes together in this configuration is the way that you should get this knife, unless they come out with an S90V carbon fiber Freek. Something like that might be a compelling option that's not this one. But currently, and even then, I think I might still pick that. For this knife, M4 makes more sense to me in that size than S90V. Anyway, I don't mean to start comparing to another knife, but this has been fun. I hope that for somebody this has been enlightening, or at least entertaining, but I tried to be as fair as I could, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys all soon. Thank you so much to everybody who's subscribed, everyone who likes, my Patreon patrons especially. Thank you guys. Those who've bought t-shirts, those who've bought stickers, those who follow me on Instagram, all of you in any capacity who have been involved, or if you've watched to this point even, thank you so much. You guys are great. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.